Hey everybody, welcome back to Electric Cafe. Today's album review is on Chris Cosey's debut album from 1981 called The Heartbeat. So Chris Cosey had just left or just separated from Throbbing Gristle after spending about a little bit over a half a decade with Throbbing Gristle, the experimental electronic slash avant-garde and music concrete slash industrial band, whatever you want to label the band. This album is almost it's at a time where synthesizer music is still in its very early stages, and it's just being harnessed in a way where 1979, 1980, 81 is starting to be used in sort of a more of a pop way, included in like pop and even the OMD for a second, for an example, or I mean, the difference of Human League's first two albums to the next couple albums is kind of the difference of that period of time. And Heartbeat is a really great example of when experimentalism and enjoyment kind of has um, an equal peak of both. Sometimes things can go too poppy and and lose a little bit of the synthetic enjoyment and the experimentalism, and it just becomes um, too over the top and too almost. I mean, it sounds like computer music. It sounds very fake. And then you have the experimental side, which sometimes can be so experimental that it's really hard to enjoy and really hard to wrap your head around, let alone leave on as background music. It's just so intense. You're trying to figure out the information that's coming at you, and it can be a little bit taxing as far as just your enjoyment of it. It doesn't mean that's bad music. It's just there's different styles of electronic music, and this album is a great example of one that does both equally well. Um, there's definitely the sum of the album in total is I think is really strong and even better than really any particular song that you can point to, because there's really all different kinds of music in here and really styles. You have like the dark monotone electronic sound in This Is Me, or kind of an experimental alien rhythms of voodoo, or the ominous dark sequencing in Just Like You, the addictive electro beat in Bus Stop, the futuristic techno sound in Useless Information, which still kind of harkens back to their experimental side, even combining some post punk, guitars. And then you have a track like, Moving Still, which still has a little bit of melancholy in there as well. And then it ends on probably my favorite track in Heartbeat, which is nothing short of epic, in my opinion. Chris Cosey's this particular album is almost like it's like a great example of the exciting future of electronic music. Like, I didn't hear this until the 90s, and I can't imagine hearing this in 1981 and maybe not being too versed on electronic music, but this must have been like hearing the future, for sure. It's kind of like a combination of Kraftwerk, Human League, and Tangerine Dream. Like when you think of the sequencing in Just Like You, it sounds very Tangerine Dream like, but it's kind of Kraftwerk, Human League, and Tangerine Dream all rolled into one. Um, if you are into early electronics, early into pop electronics music, like, this is a must listen. The keyboards, to me, they sound like a really warm synthetic, and the rhythms are really well done. In some ways, it's kind of a proto techno record. In some ways, it's very minimal. There's a dash of synth pop in there, and a bit of electro, but it's just all so before those times. It's just it's treading its own ground. And you got to hand it to Chris Cosey and Throbbing Gristle for kind of helping, um, you know, champion this kind of experimentalism with new instruments and the electronics that they were using is just it's exciting and it's so ahead of its time, you know. When I look at the individual tracks, I don't know if really any of them stand out too much. They're very consistent. Of course, I do have some favorites. The first track, "Put Yourself in Los Angeles," I think it's probably on the weaker side. Although, as far as the rest of the songs, it might be on the weaker side. But still, it's very unusual, and it really kind of depends on what you're liking about electronic music. If you like this one, or you might like something else more. It really all probably depends on what your interests are in electronic music and what you're kind of looking for when you think back to 1981 and what you like about electronic music. It really all depends what you're into. But I think everybody will find something in here that they really like and that they'll not only appreciate that it's way before uh, a lot of other bands, but I think they'll also appreciate it because of the sounds themselves and just the creativity, but it's more so even the rawness of the early electronics and I like how the album isn't trying to be anything it's not, and yet it hits on so many levels. Put Yourself in Los Angeles, I give it 2.5 stars. This Is Me, I like a lot better. It's 3.25 stars. Voodoo, I think, is really strong, 3 stars. More by 2.75 stars. Radio, 2.5 stars. And then the second half of the album is brilliant in my opinion. It's really strong, and it's I think it's the better of the first half of the second side, and it starts really right at track 6 for me with Just Like You. I get the sampling with the movies soundtracks in there is very Tangerine Dream with the sound in here as well. I give it 3.25 stars. Bus Stop is a wicked electro track, wicked beat, 3.25 stars. Useless Information, I give 3.5 stars too. Sequencer Heaven, really, it's a blend of guitars and electronics. You know, Moving Still, I got 3.25 stars too. You know, more ambient, atmospheric, really good track. A little bit of melancholy in there. Manic Melody is kind of, you know, I like it a little bit less, but it's still a kind of an exciting track, and it's still a unique track, and I would think if you know, if you're into different electronics than I am, Put Yourself in Los Angeles, maybe more be Radio Void, but also Manic Monday might be more towards your style. Like if you're more into rock music or post-punk, then maybe electronic. Excuse me. I can see you liking these tracks a little bit more than the other tracks. But I give Manic Melody 2.75 stars, and then my favorite track is Heartbeat, 4 stars. Just it's an epic track. It sounds like Vangelis. It kind of sounds like, you know, it's probably a little bit more industrial than some of the other ones, but just a great rawness to the record, and I can't really fault anything when it comes to this record. Anything creatively constructive, or recording wise, or song wise. You know, there's a part of me that kind of wishes there was a little bit more catchy stuff in here, so I could really kind of say that this was a over the top excellent album. But as far as like it being like an experimental album, it being an early electronic album, sound wise and production wise, and the programming of the rhythms and the sounds, like there's probably nothing that you can give that would be better than this in 1981 in many ways. It is kind of a great example of early electronic album. And you know, I when I add up the stars, I get 33.75 stars divided by 11 songs, which is a 3.06, which is somewhere around maybe like 71 or so. But I give it extra points for all the things that I talked about, as far as it just being way ahead of the time in a lot of ways, it being a perfect balance of experimentalism and pop electronics. It's kind of verging on the future of what's coming, and I just don't think you can really fault anything on here. And I really like the more avant-garde sounds like this, and a lot of darker sounds in here as well. There's really not any happy stuff, but there is a little bit of melancholy and ambient and good atmosphere, and so there is kind of a brighter side, but it's more synthetic than it is maybe moody. It's a great example of early electronics. I don't know what else to say. I gave it a 7 extra points just for everything I talked about. So I give it a 78 out of 100. It's very close to being, obviously, that's a really high score on very good on my rating scale. It's very close to being a genre classic. I could see this being possibly a genre classic for experimentalism, for electronics, for almost early EBM music, early industrial. You could almost say that this, but even more so, maybe even like electro and techno, proto techno. This is very ahead of its time for that as well. I mean, techno didn't get coined till probably a year later after this. So I mean, it's groundbreaking on many genres. It's very close to being excellent for me. Like it's kind of, maybe if there was a little bit to remember a few tracks by that were really catchy, maybe another Heartbeat, another moody epic one like that would be good. But if Just Like You, I think, or This Is Me was a little bit stronger, I think I could say that those were tracks that are very catchy, even though they are very catchy. But it's to the level that I'm looking at where I'm walking away from it and not playing it, and I want to go back and play it. I don't think any of those tracks are really at that point. But again, I think overall as an album that you would want to play it. But I think if it had a little bit more enjoyment, a little bit of more melodics, a little bit more melody, maybe not as alien sounding, just because this was like right on the edge of darker electronics. Like it's almost to the point where it's verging on just really dark tracks in general. And there's a little bit of ominous sounds in there too. But if there was a little bit more ethereal or melancholy in there, I think maybe some sort of like ballad or a really more ambient track in there would really kind of take it over the top. Or even a more industrial track in there would kind of take it over the top too. But again, I'm picking at straws here, trying to defend why I don't call this an excellent album, because it's so close. A very good album though. Just curious what your thoughts are on this album. What would you rate this album on 1 to 100 scale, using my scale? And curious your thoughts on this album. But yeah, a really strong album. And it's an album that it grows with you after the years. Like it might sound a little alien at first, but it as you play it more, it gets better. But if it got even more better, then I felt like I could put it in the 80s, because it's not necessarily the album that I would really go to and like I want to enjoy an album. Let me put it on. If I want a challenging album or something different or something unique, play Heartbeat. All right, thanks for listening.